Elon Musk, the name the world associates with brilliance, innovation, and impossible dreams. But behind the roar of rockets and the glow of achievement, there's a man who has carried too much in silence. A man who's built bridges to the stars, yet sometimes can't cross the distance within his own heart. He's reached the heights humanity once thought unreachable. But in that rare air of success, he's discovered something few ever admit, that loneliness grows louder the closer you get to your dreams. Because when the lights fade and the applause dissolves, what remains isn't the sound of engines, it's the echo of everything you've lost along the way. Elon has built empires that touch the sky, but some nights, he still feels the gravity of love that slipped away the memory of someone who made him feel human before the world made him legendary. This isn't a story about technology or triumph. It's about the man beneath the myth, the man who still believes that no matter how far he travels, some hearts are written into your journey before you ever take the first step. Elon Musk. To the world, his name is carved into the architecture of the future rockets piercing the sky. Machines that think, cities that hum with electricity instead of breath. But beneath all that brilliance lies something quieter, more fragile. A man who has spent a lifetime building bridges to the stars while slowly losing the ones that led back home. He learned early that greatness is a solitary pursuit. While others slept, he stayed awake, not because of insomnia, but because the mind that dreams of Mars does not rest easily on Earth. The night stretched longer than the days, the silence heavier than applause. There's a certain kind of loneliness that comes not from being unseen, but from being seen by everyone except the one heart you wish could truly understand. The world celebrates what he creates, but the world never saw what it cost. The hours traded for meaning, the friendships that faded between deadlines, the love that slipped away because passion for the infinite left no space for the present. Every success was a sacrifice in disguise. Every headline hid a heartbreak. Sometimes, he wonders if creation itself is just another form of longing, the need to fill an emptiness that no machine can fix. Because even when the sky opened and his dreams took flight, the silence beneath the roar was deafening. He realized that reaching the stars meant drifting further from everything human, everything soft. There's a cruel paradox in ambition. The higher you climb, the thinner the air becomes. The lights get brighter, but the laughter grows distant. People cheer your name, but few know your soul. They see the genius, the conqueror of frontiers, but not the man at 3 a.m., staring at a half-finished equation, wondering if the universe will ever love him back. He's learned that creation is a form of confession. Every invention whispers something unsaid. The rocket, the car, the code, they are all fragments of a prayer he could never speak aloud. A plea not to be forgotten. A longing to be understood. And yet, in that endless motion toward the unknown, he found beauty. Because creation, like love, demands vulnerability. You build, not because you're certain it will work, but because you can't live with the silence of what if. He's not sure when it happened, when the dream to change the world became an escape from himself. Maybe it was after one too many nights of watching stars instead of faces. Maybe it was the moment he realized that no matter how much light you bring into the world, you can't escape your own shadow. But somewhere deep inside, beyond logic, beyond ambition, there's still a boy looking at the sky not as a scientist, but as a soul. A boy who once believed that love and discovery could coexist. That maybe, one day, the universe would answer back. He still believes, quietly, painfully, that every creation, every risk, every sleepless night is not just about reaching the stars, but about leaving a piece of his heart somewhere out there among them. And in the end, that's what drives him. Not success, not legacy, but the fragile hope that somewhere in the vastness of all he's built, someone, someday, will understand what he was truly trying to say. Success has a sound. At first, it's thunder applause, cameras, the electric hum of a world in awe. But over time, that sound fades. The noise becomes distant. The voices blur, and what remains isn't victory, it's silence. A silence so vast, so precise, that even breathing feels intrusive. Elon knows that silence. He's lived inside it longer than he's lived inside any home. It's the kind that follows every triumph, the pause after the launch, the stillness after the crowd leaves, the echo that answers no one. It's not the absence of sound, it's the absence of someone. He remembers the first time he stood alone, after achieving everything he'd ever dreamed of. The rocket had reached orbit. The impossible had been done. Reporters called it genius. Investors called it history. But when the lights dimmed, he realized something no one ever warned him about. Success is only loud when others are watching. When you're finally alone with it, it whispers nothing at all. And in that whisper, he heard what he'd been avoiding. That no matter how many stars he reached, he was always looking for one that reminded him of her. The world thinks ambition fills you, but it doesn't. It empties you slowly, beautifully, mercilessly. You keep giving and giving until there's nothing left to give but the echo of what you've lost. He's surrounded by everything he once prayed for: innovation, impact, legacy. Yet, when he walks through those quiet corridors at night, past glass walls and blinking lights, he feels the ghost of absence more than the presence of success. He's built machines that can cross planets, but none that can bridge the distance between two hearts that stop speaking. There's a certain ache in realizing that the future you built was never meant to be shared alone. You can build empires, yes. You can touch the stars. But what good is the cosmos if you can't look at it and say, "We made it"? Some nights, he still catches himself looking up, not as an engineer, but as a man, hoping that maybe somewhere, someone's looking up at the same sky, remembering him in the same quiet way. That thought stays with him longer than any invention. Because meaning, he's learned, doesn't come from progress, it comes from presence. And presence, once lost, becomes the loudest silence in the universe. He's come to understand that solitude isn't just the cost of creation, it's the proof of it. You can't change the world without leaving pieces of yourself behind. You can't rewrite destiny without erasing parts of your own story. And you can't reach for the infinite without first letting go of someone finite. Sometimes he wonders if that's what it truly means to be a visionary, not to see farther than others, but to lose more than most. The stars are beautiful, yes. But beauty without warmth is just distance wearing light. And so he stands beneath them, the man who gave the world a future, yet still searches for a home inside his own heart. In that stillness, he whispers to himself, barely audible beneath the hum of the machines. Maybe brilliance was never the reward. Maybe it was the price. There was a time when his world wasn't made of metal and light, when love didn't have to compete with gravity or deadlines. Before the launches, before the headlines, there was her. Not a dream, not a theory, but a presence that felt like calm between storms. Elon never talks about her. The world wouldn't understand. To them, he's the man who built the impossible, not the man who lost something irreplaceable in the process. But every genius has a ghost, and hers lingers in the spaces between his thoughts, in the scent of coffee, left cold beside a glowing screen, in the silence that feels too familiar to be empty. She was the one who made him feel human before he became myth, the one who reminded him that even visionaries need rest, that even minds made for the stars need a place to land. But love, like gravity, pulls hardest when you try to escape it. And in chasing the infinite, he lost the finite, the warmth, the laughter, the life between the lines of ambition. He told himself it was necessary, that destiny demands sacrifice, that the world doesn't change without losing something sacred. But in the quiet hours, when equations fade and blueprints blur, he knows that what he lost wasn't a distraction. It was the anchor that kept him from drifting too far from himself. There are nights when he still reaches for his phone without thinking, half expecting a message that will never come. Moments when he hears her name whispered through static, or sees a shadow that moves like her in the reflection of a passing train. He wonders if she ever understood that every invention, every sleepless night was for her. Not to impress, but to honor. Not to prove genius, but to make her proud, even from a distance. He's learned that love doesn't vanish when it ends. It mutates from laughter into memory, from presence into echo, from touch into energy. And sometimes that energy becomes creation. Every project, every vision, a coded confession she'll never read. He thinks of the paradox often, how the man who could design a machine to survive the void couldn't design a way to stop his own heart from missing her. The world sees a pioneer, but beneath the equations and engines lives a poet too afraid to write the one story that mattered most. The story where he stays instead of builds, where he loves instead of conquers. Sometimes he imagines what life would have been like if he'd chosen differently. A quieter house, a smaller dream, a heart that knew peace more than purpose. But then he looks at the stars and realizes that love never left. It only changed form, because when she smiled, she gave him the light he's been chasing ever since. Every launch, every risk, every sleepless night, all of it, just an attempt to return to that single, fleeting moment when he felt infinite in her eyes. He doesn't chase her anymore. He carries her, in the way he builds, in the way he hopes, in the way he still looks to the heavens, not searching for planets, but for pieces of a love that time could never erase. Memory has a strange kind of gravity. No matter how far he travels, it pulls him gently, relentlessly back to the moments he thought he'd left behind. For Elon, the past doesn't live in photographs or words. It lives in sensations, the smell of rain against glass, the quiet hum of city lights at 2 a.m., the way her laughter once softened the edges of his exhaustion. He's built ships to defy gravity, to break free from Earth's pull. And yet, it's the invisible force of memory that keeps him tethered not to this planet, but to his humanity. Sometimes, in the middle of a boardroom or a hangar filled with engineers, a single note of music will drift through a speaker, and for a heartbeat, he's somewhere else. A small apartment filled with warmth, not ambition. A hand reaching across the table. A promise made without words. He's learned that time doesn't erase what's real. It only teaches you how to carry it differently. Love doesn't disappear. It evolves from presence into essence, from voice into vibration, from touch into knowing. And in that knowing, he finds something both painful and profound. That memory, when pure, is not a weight, it's a map. It leads him back to who he was before the world called him extraordinary, before the sleepless nights became normal, before success began to sound like loneliness. He often revisits the same thought, that maybe memory is heaven's way of keeping the heart from forgetting what truly matters. Because even as the world moves faster, as technology accelerates beyond imagination, the soul moves at its own quiet pace, anchored to the places where it once felt seen. He stood before the ocean on nights when the sky felt too heavy, and the waves seemed to whisper her name. Not out loud, not as an echo, but as a pulse, steady, familiar. And in that rhythm, he feels something deeper than nostalgia. It's not longing, it's remembrance. The sacred act of honoring the love that made him possible. He once believed progress meant escape, that to move forward, he had to leave behind. But now he knows that memory isn't a chain, it's an orbit, and everything that truly mattered still moves around him, unseen but constant. Every breakthrough, every idea, every sleepless night carries a trace of her. In the quiet hum of his machines, in the golden hour light reflecting off steel, in the way his hands still tremble slightly when he touches something delicate, he realizes now that memory is not the opposite of progress. It's the soul of it. Because every creation, every step into the unknown is an attempt to honor the love, the moments, and the people who first taught us how to dream. He's not haunted by the past anymore. He's guided by it. It reminds him that no matter how vast the universe becomes, the greatest discoveries are not found in galaxies, but in the fragile gravity of a memory that refuses to fade. And in that gravity, he finds peace. A quiet truth that keeps him grounded even as he continues to chase the stars. For years, Elon believed connection was something optional, a luxury for those not burdened by destiny. He convinced himself that love could wait, that companionship was a distraction from the greater mission. But now, after crossing every frontier he once imagined, he sees it clearly. It was never the stars that gave his life meaning. It was the people who reminded him to look up. There's a quiet irony in success. It teaches you everything about reaching higher, but almost nothing about staying close. He's learned that progress without presence is just movement without warmth, and that no amount of achievement can replace the human heartbeat that once gave it purpose. In the soft light of early morning, when the city still sleeps and his mind finally slows, he thinks of the small things, the sound of laughter over dinner, a message left unsent, the simple grace of being understood without explanation. It's in those moments that he realizes connection was never the obstacle, it was the answer. He's met thousands of people, brilliant minds, dreamers, believers, but only a few ever looked past the myth and saw the man. The one who hides exhaustion behind curiosity, who masks loneliness with logic, the man who builds not for glory, but for belonging. He remembers the ones who stayed when he was quiet, who didn't need him to speak to understand what the silence meant. They are rare, the kind of souls who remind you that love doesn't always arrive with grand gestures. Sometimes, it's just someone sitting beside you in the dark, saying nothing, but staying. He's realized that connection isn't about being seen by millions. It's about being known by one. Because fame amplifies noise, but love amplifies truth. And truth, when shared, becomes healing. The world may call him a visionary, but visions mean little if they never touch another soul. He's learned that every invention, every breakthrough, should be an act of empathy, a way to make life not just more efficient, but more alive. When you love deeply, whether a person, an idea, or humanity itself, you begin to build differently. You stop designing for perfection and start designing for meaning, because love changes the way you create. It gives the mechanical a heartbeat. It turns ambition into purpose. Sometimes he wonders if that's why he works so tirelessly, not to escape loneliness, but to bridge it, to create something that reminds people and himself that we are all searching for connection in a universe that often feels indifferent. He's no longer chasing the future as an escape from the present. He's building it as a way to return to the place, the feeling, the people who once made him whole. Because connection is not found in crowds or celebration. It's found in quiet understanding, in shared silence, in eyes that say, "I see you," when words fail. And when he finally looks back at everything he's built, the rockets, the cities, the machines, he realizes that none of it truly matters without the one thing he spent his life trying to ignore: the simple, irreplaceable beauty of being connected. That's what all of this was for, not to prove what he could build, but to remember who he could still feel. And for the first time in a long time, he whispers into the stillness, "I understand now. It was never about reaching the stars. It was about finding someone to look at them with." Every dream demands an offering, and the greater the dream, the more it takes. Elon has given years that felt like seconds, and seconds that felt like lifetimes. The world sees the triumphs, the rockets rising, the applause, the promises fulfilled, but it never hears the quiet sound of what was left behind. The birthdays missed, the conversations cut short, the love that faded slowly, not from neglect, but from distance, disguised as devotion. He tells himself it was necessary, that every step forward for humanity requires someone willing to walk alone. But even visionaries have moments when conviction trembles, when the question slips through the cracks of exhaustion. At what cost? He has stared at the glow of his own creations, the cold beauty of technology, and wondered if in reaching for the infinite, he forgot how to hold the finite, how to hold someone. There's a kind of pain that doesn't cry out. It lingers quietly, like static between radio signals. It's the sound of a soul stretched between what it loves and what it's called to do. And Elon knows that sound intimately. He's lived inside that frequency for decades, where purpose collides with longing and neither wins. The truth is, he never wanted to be worshipped. He wanted to be understood. But history rarely understands its pioneers. It records their impact, not their loneliness. It immortalizes the moment of achievement, but forgets the empty room that came after. Sometimes, when he watches the stars disappear behind the dawn, he wonders if progress is just another word for grief, because for every milestone, something human must be left behind. A memory, a voice, a simple life that could have been. He's learned that sacrifice doesn't always look heroic. It often looks ordinary. A coffee gone cold while reviewing data, a text unsent because there was no time, a heart too tired to explain why it hurts. People think the hardest part of vision is failure. It isn't. It's the isolation that comes when success finally arrives, and you realize there's no one left to share it with. He stood before his achievements and felt pride, yes, but also a quiet H, as if every creation was asking him, was it worth it? He doesn't always have an answer, because creation is a kind of betrayal, a choice to give your best self to the future, while leaving your present self behind. It's a trade that only makes sense to those who understand that greatness and loss are twin flames, burning together, consuming everything in their path. And yet, he wouldn't undo it, because somewhere deep in his chest, beneath the weariness, there's a pulse that says this was always his path, that every sleepless night, every sacrifice, was a love letter not to one person, but to all who would come after. He's not chasing immortality. He's building memory for humanity, for her, for himself. And maybe that's what sacrifice truly is. Not losing for nothing, but giving so others won't have to. So that someone, someday, can look up at the sky and whisper with gratitude, he was here. There comes a moment, after the striving and the storms, when silence no longer feels empty, it feels eternal. Elon has reached that place. It didn't arrive with applause or revelation. It came quietly, in the still hum of a spacecraft engine, in the slow rotation of a planet seen from miles above everything human. Up there, the noise of the world fades, and what remains is clarity, raw, humbling, infinite. He looks down at Earth, not as an empire of progress, but as a fragile, luminous pulse suspended in darkness. Every city light, every story, every heartbeat, all of it flickering together like neurons in the same cosmic mind. For the first time in years, he breathes without urgency. There's no equation to solve, no deadline to chase, just the endless horizon stretching into silence. And in that stillness, something within him softens, a recognition that the purpose of creation was never control. It was connection. A thread woven through all living things, invisible but unbreakable. He realizes now that the universe was never asking him to conquer it. It was asking him to listen, to understand that, even among the stars, the greatest frontier is still the human heart. Every invention, every rocket, every sleepless night, they were never escapes from Earth. They were prayers sent into the void, hoping that somewhere, someone would hear them. Because at his core, he wasn't trying to reach Mars. He was trying to reach meaning. And now, gazing into infinity, he feels a strange peace in knowing that meaning doesn't live out there. It lives in the moments that shaped him, in the voice that once said, I believe in you, in the laughter that once broke the weight of exhaustion, in the love that once taught him that to create is to care. He understands now that transcendence isn't escape. It's integration. It's bringing everything you've loved, lost, and learned into a single moment of acceptance. It's realizing that progress and peace were never opposites. They were simply waiting to meet in the same silence. The stars don't demand worship from him anymore. They mirror him vast, luminous, scarred, and alive. He sees in them what he once could not see in himself, that even light must travel through darkness before it finds a place to rest. And maybe that's what this was all about, not to own the cosmos, but to finally feel at home within it, to stand between the infinite and the intimate, and understand they were never separate. He closes his eyes, and for a fleeting second, he can almost hear her voice, soft, distant, woven into the starlight. It doesn't ache this time, it simply is, a presence that neither time nor distance could erase. He smiles not as an inventor, not as a visionary, but as a man who finally understands the beauty of stillness. Because in the vastness of everything he's reached, he's finally found what he was missing all along. Not noise, not motion, but peace. In the end, there are no more missions to complete, no deadlines left to chase, just the sound of his own breath, steady against the quiet hum of the universe. For the first time, Elon doesn't feel the need to move forward. He simply lets the stillness hold him weightless, infinite, alive. He once believed that silence was the absence of purpose, that stillness meant failure. Now he understands. Silence was never empty. It was sacred. It was the language of everything he had been too busy to hear. All his life, he tried to bridge worlds, earth and sky, logic and feeling, destiny and loss. But maybe the bridge was never something to build. Maybe it was something to be. A living thread connecting dream to flesh, invention to emotion, the human to the eternal. In this vastness, he realizes he was never truly alone. Every connection he thought he lost, every love, every voice, every fleeting gaze, still lives here, folded into the same fabric of space that carried his rockets and his hopes. The universe didn't take them away, it just changed their form. They became echoes, constellations, energy. They became the quiet company in every silent night. He looks out through the observation glass one last time. The stars shimmer like memories, and the earth glows faintly, fragile, forgiving. It no longer looks like a place he left. It looks like a heart still beating. He smiles softly, because now he sees it. Everything he was searching for in the heavens had been within him all along. The love, the meaning, the belonging. It wasn't in the noise of applause or the rush of invention. It was in the quiet truth that love, in all its forms, is the gravity that holds everything together. He thinks of her again, the one who existed like a quiet orbit in his story. Not a destination, but a presence that never faded. And instead of longing, he feels gratitude. Gratitude that he got to feel something that real, something that strong, something that survived even the vast silence of the stars. Maybe this is what peace truly means. Not forgetting, but remembering without pain. Not reaching for more, but finally resting in enough. He closes his eyes, and the hum of the ship fades into something softer. A heartbeat, a whisper, the universe exhaling. Everything is still. Everything is connected. And somewhere, between one breath and the next, he understands. To love, to create, to remember, was never about conquering the cosmos. It was about finding home within it. In the quiet, after everything, after the noise, the brilliance, the storms, Elon sits beneath the same stars that once called him forward. But this time, he isn't chasing them, he's listening. And for the first time, the silence feels like an answer. The man who carried too much, who built his dreams out of sleepless nights and unspoken prayers, finally understands. Love was never the thing he left behind. It was the light guiding him through it all. Every failure, every launch, every lonely horizon, all of it was love, disguised as destiny. He looks at the vastness before him and feels no urge to conquer it, only gratitude. Because the universe no longer feels like something to reach it, feels like something that remembers. Every star is a memory. Every silence, a connection that time could not break. Maybe that's what love truly is, the quiet gravity that binds what logic cannot explain. the unseen force that reminds us that even when two souls drift apart, they are never truly lost. Somewhere beyond distance, they are still orbiting the same truth. So he closes his eyes, exhales softly, and lets the silence speak. Because some stories don't end. They simply become light, traveling endlessly, waiting to be found again. If this spoke to your heart, stay a while. There's more waiting in the silence.